Garland visited the capital city today to meet with local law enforcement. 3 on Your Side's Nathan Lee joins us now to share what Garland thinks about crime, as well as the sentencings of the Rankin County Goon Squad.
Well, Maggie, after the recent announcements from the Department of Justice, you may have thought that we were going to see another announcement today, but instead the meeting was a formality for Attorney General Garland. He is traveling the country to talk to local law enforcement and attorneys' offices about the arrests they made this past year. Garland was joined by U.S. Attorney Todd G., along with federal, state, and law enforcement leaders. They discussed successful cases like a drug and gun trafficking case that led to an arrest where more than 5,700 grams of methamphetamine, 236 grams of fentanyl, and 84 grams of cocaine were seized. He also pointed to the work of the Justice Department to secure sentences for the Goon Squad. Garland speaks about restoring trust in communities like Rankin County and hopes their continued work can bring that.
As we work together to reduce violent crime, we know that building and maintaining public trust is essential to public safety. That is why the Justice Department has taken action when that trust has been violated. But we know that progress in many communities is still uneven, and of course there is no acceptable level of violent crime.
They also announced grant work like the nearly $300,000 awarded to Jackson to enhance its forensic science capabilities. That grant is a part of the more than $29 million the Justice Department is awarding to organizations and government agencies in Mississippi this month to support law enforcement activities and community initiatives. Nathan Lee, 3 on Your Side.